AC is with us to start things out tonight in Ohio. You're on Free Talk Live AC.
Yeah, I've called in today, and I'm kind of irritated. I've been having a lot of problems with our mutual friend, James the Whit, as I've been calling him, because he keeps just bothering the crap out of me with the things he said. And after yesterday's call, I basically hit the roof.
So he hasn't been calling you at home or anything like that. You've just been irritated by him on our airwaves.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I've been listening to you guys for over 3 years now, and I've never met someone so bigoted, so hateful, so destructive, so angry. And
do you think he's real, AC?
Yeah, Ian and I were having this discussion.
I think he's real. I mean, I've had to put, as someone who's listened to your show for a long time, I've had to put up with people like, Scott the Bigot or Lou, xenophobic Lou, but those guys were kind of funny in some of the things they said that you could just write them off. But Whit is a very serious person, and he's one of the biggest hypocrites I've ever met on your show. Yesterday, one of the things he did yesterday that just pissed me off was he basically called in and threatened you guys. He said basically anyone who believes, like with that cop story, who thought that cop wasn't wrongfully killed or something like that. I hope hell awaits you. I hope you get the same treatment, or something like that. He was threatening people, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Well, I can't. I remember the call you're talking about. It didn't seem like it was last night, but maybe it was. Maybe it was. I don't know. They all tend to blur together for me. So, what's your solution? You don't like Whit calling? So
call about him and bring him up again,
the
right?
Fact is
why call about him?
The fact is
because that'll probably cause him to call.
It's Free Talk Live. People can call. So, what do you want to do?
Well, the thing of it is I actually would, my words, things I want to say about Whit, I want to direct towards him, because I know he's listening, considering that he pretty much he seems to be, since he listens to everything. And I just want to say to Whit, you are one of the most hypocritical people I've ever met. You sit there and call the people on this show and some of the callers, you've called them disgusting, bigoted people, hateful, but yet you supported the murder and destruction of innocent people, of innocent life in Japan. You supported the wars going on in Iraq and Iran and all the stuff the United States government's doing. You spreaded numerous hatred and discrimination against Muslims and Japanese people. You've threatened people. You've mocked other people's ideologies while believing in stories like Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark. And you've also supported the police harassing victims, people like what you guys are talking about with the Fat Shop raid.
Fat Stuff, which is the local head shop here in Keene, New Hampshire. Yeah, Whit claims to be on one hand a libertarian and a Christian, but he doesn't seem to really meet the qualifications from my perspective.
I find it very interesting. So I asked him about what makes you think you're a libertarian, and he said that he read Bastiat, and I can't remember what the other book was that he read, and that he found some resonance with that. And I like that explanation, but it just seems like if he believes in liberty, where does he believe in liberty?
I don't know. I think Christ was pretty hypocritical too. So
how's that?
Well, he hung out with Mary Magdalene, but he was really quick to put down people like her.
Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute. There was a prostitute in the Bible. However, she was not it. Mary Magdalene could very well have been his wife.
Well, you know what? Ask and you shall receive. Whit is on the line, and you're on with AC. Whit, go ahead. Whit, going once.
I'd like to respond to every one of AC's prejudiced, closed-minded, and retarded stereotypes. Not to mention, I'll start out with his claiming I'm a hypocrite. Okay, yesterday or 2 days ago, Tom did celebrate the death of a cop. And he did.
No, he didn't. I re-listened to that call. I listened to the thing.
Don't interrupt me, kid. Hey, kid, don't interrupt me. And he said a lot of things that I've actually never even said, by the way, on Free Talk Live. Like I've never met.
I re-listened to every one of your calls, Whit, and you have said numerous things towards Muslims.
You made a litany of charges.
I do want to give Whit a chance to respond. So, AC, if you keep interrupting him, I'm going to put you on hold.
The last word, by the way. Not just don't give him the first and the last word. By the way,
you don't get to tell me what to do. But go ahead.
He loves doing that, doesn't he?
I'm talking to AC. I'm talking to AC, by the way. He got me all fired up.
All right, Whit, go ahead and
By the way,
respond. I've asked AC to remain quiet.
Tom did celebrate the death of the cop, and he was a lyrical joke, Mark, and it's not funny. And if somebody ever rapes your kid while a cop in Keene is giving a drunkard a ride home in the opposite direction, if somebody were to call in and make a joke about that, it wouldn't be funny at all. But because it involved a narco anti-capitalist cop, all you guys thought it was funny. Anyway, I can never recall ever mentioning the words Iraq and Afghanistan. But he's just made an assumption, a blanket assumption that what I believe. I've never mentioned it once, and I've been on your show.
But we did talk about the Middle East on several occasions, though.
I always call in to challenge libertarians to think a second time, and not as a what did you call them, Republican? You don't even listen to Republican conservative talk radio stations. And Ben Carson, by the way, Mark, has been on all those shows that your loser of his religion, Brett, likes to slander as being racist.
I am lost at this point. Whit, are you going to respond to AC's allegations?
Okay, Brett made a slander about...
I don't want to talk about Brett. He's not on the air right now. If you want to talk to Brett, you can call on Wednesday night.
To him next week. Yeah, and let me speak
all right,
to
Whit,
him then. Don't
you either get to respond to AC or you're
button.
done. Do you have anything else to say to AC?
Okay. Yeah, there's a litany of charges he made. I've only gotten to two. What were the other ones? AC, the murder of innocents in Japan? Okay, AC,
Yeah.
like I said, you're a child. You're literally a child.
I'm a 25-year-old grown-up man.
You're 25 is the new 18. In the year of our Lord 2014, 25 is the new 18.
You're not a Christian. You're a Pharisee. You support murder.
All right, Whit's done.
Buddy.
I'm done with Whit. Thank you for the call, Whit. AC, any response to Whit's rambling screed?
No, it's very, very unlibertarian. It's very unchristian. He is one of the biggest Pharisee Christians I've heard on your radio show in a long time.
I'd say that's an accurate description of Whit. I'm with you.
Yeah.
He said here that he wants libertarians to think twice about some of the issues that and I think that's interesting. I mean, yes, I think people should think twice. They should constantly be reevaluating their positions over and over again, and it makes me wonder, now is he making it up? Is that his goal? Is to get you to consider your position, to either destroy your old position, move to a new one, or to bolster your current position? I think that's that was an interesting point that he made.
AC, anything else you want to share tonight?
Yeah, just one thing to Whit, who's probably still listening. All I have to say is, if we're going to talk, when it comes to you supporting murder, Whit, when it comes to particularly Japan, because that's the biggest one we've talked about, all I have to say is this: who would Christ nuke?
Thanks for the call, AC. Appreciate hearing from you. Go to Whit. He's in Arizona. Whit, you're on Free Talk Live with Ian and Mark.
I don't believe that's probably true, that cops are dirtier than your average criminal that ends up in the courthouse.
I don't know.
He said the general public, not the average criminal in the courthouse.
Well, just like your previous caller, didn't a known speed trap? Was she speeding or not? In black and blue? What kind of blue is he talking about? Dark blue or light blue?
Who cares if she was speeding or not? Was anyone in danger? Probably not.
Bigotry that you have, one of you two have towards cops is amazing. I'm not
bigoted towards cops. I just don't want the police to hurt peaceful people.
Do you think I do?
I don't know anything about you.
Who wants cops to hurt peaceful people? I don't know anybody that wants cops to hurt peaceful people. I know they're dirty cops.
Oh, I know plenty of people who want the cops to hurt peaceful people. Everyone who supports the war on drugs wants that.
Okay. That's a totally different story, but that's not true. Drugs are bad for you, and I can't.
Which drugs?
Whether or not you or I agree with our.
Well, hold on. There's a lot of drugs out there. Some of them are not bad for you.
Okay, I know that. I actually have been libertarian all my life. I do know that there are bad drugs in this world that I understand why people think they should be illegal. They're not good for you, and they cause tremendous harm in society.
Time in jail is a lot more harmful.
I don't think they should be illegal either.
Right.
And I don't support the so-called war on drugs.
Okay.
I think it's been a travesty. But again, I digress. I called in to open up, sorry, if I may, old war wounds. Are you with me?
Right go ahead. It's Free Talk Live. Talk about whatever you want.
I think it's Ian that scoffed at the idea that violence can beget peace. But I believe it was you, Ian, that said something about, well, maybe in the short term, but not in the long term.
It's only an illusion of peace, because in order to have peace, your means must contain peace.
Okay, it is you that said that before I got a chance to respond. I shall now like to respond to that, because it was in the context of speaking of violence, the evil empire of Japan, who had murdered millions of people literally up until Little Boy was dropped on Nagasaki. They unconditionally surrendered. The United States military took over the evil empire of Japan, and Japan has never gone on the warpath ever since, and the U.S. military didn't kill any more Japs as a matter of it literally is now a free country that's been prosperous since August of 1945. Again, how many have they murdered? None that I can think of. And the U.S. military made it a free country through vicious acts of violence.
Well,
so I should like to ask the following question.
Let me rebut that. I get what you're saying. You're saying that Japan was aggressive. It was doing terrible things in China, and the fact that the United States wanted to go to war with them. Forget about that. That's not important.
Wait a second. No, you can't say that. That's not true.
The McCullough memo. Go ahead and look it up. Stop talking. McCullough memo. Write it down. Write down McCullough memo and look it up after you get off the phone call.
Okay. Now, so McCullough's responsible for World War II?
No, but for sure. We know for sure FDR saw that memo. And why in the world did they put this together? Why did they want to go to fight with Japan? I want to respond to your original point.
The evil empire of Japan had already murdered millions of people before December 7th, 1941. They were on a warpath.
So just to be clear, you don't think that the dropping of bombs on innocent, peaceful people and slaughtering thousands of people, that's not evil? Just to clarify before you keep talking, that's not evil to drop bombs on innocent people?
Okay. Hiroshima and
just want to be clear, can you answer my question? Is it evil to drop bombs on innocent people?
It's a sorry fact of war that the innocent people that lived in Nagasaki and Hiroshima also had relatives that were going to munitions factories that had produced bombs that had murdered millions of people before August of 41 when they were shut down forever.
So is it evil to drop bombs on innocent people, sir?
No.
Well, thanks for the call. I've had enough of that.
I used to live within a half a mile of a place that made the brains of the Patriot missile. And does that mean that it's okay to drop a bomb on that place and blow up me and my house? That doesn't. I mean, that's the unfortunate reality of war.
According to him, when the Japanese drop bombs on people, then it's evil. But when Americans drop bombs, then it's totally fine. It's just war.
Look, I completely agree with him that Japan was doing evil stuff in China. I got it. I'm 100%. The claim that the U.S. is somehow that violence beget peace. Yes, it did on one side. You can make that argument with Japan, but it certainly didn't beget it on the side of the United States. The United States was propelled into the world as the world's superpower at that moment in time. Everybody else was destroyed, and it's not like they laid down their arms or anything like that. The United States is currently in since that time, has gotten into treaties with 54 countries that they will go to war with 54 countries. That's a quarter of the planet as far as numbers of countries go. So don't act like, the U.S. is now the military of the world. So violence didn't beget peace on the other side of the situation. What you're claiming, Ian, is that one can't get to peace through violence, and you're not saying that that you can't put down one side of a situation. You can't punch somebody. Clearly, if an aggressor comes at you, you pull out a gun and put a bullet in his head, you've ended violence from that guy's point of view. But you've also propelled violence from your side. So this is a two-way street.
And what about the guy's family members who might be upset that you just took away their loved one? Are they perhaps more likely to use violence against you at that point? Could be a feud situation.
Now, I would
do you
disagree.
think everybody in Japan feels real warm and rosy in their hearts about the United States
They
today?
certainly don't like that whole Hiroshima Nagasaki thing. Yeah. I tend to disagree. I think that one needs to use a certain level of force to defend oneself, especially if one has a family and those sorts of things.
Different on an individual level than it is on a national scale.
On a national scale,
exterminating people.
Yeah, on a national scale, they force people to fight, and they force people. The consequences of actions are forced upon them, as you can see with innocent people being killed in Nagasaki.
Whit, you're on Free Talk Live.
Well, first thing about the anarchist caller that said government doesn't exist, so to speak. I'm sure that if I were to strike him in the face, he'd be the first person to be going looking for a real-world government to do something about it. And I'd be fine with that. But back to the real world, and one of you two said something about they hate us because we're over there. No, the people like, for instance, that committed the atrocity of September 11th, hate us because they were taught to hate. Just like Adolf Hitler, when he declared war on December 11th, 1941, on us 4 days after the Japs did. We didn't have anybody over there, so to speak, anywhere in Europe or in China or Japan.
There was not any military on the ground in Asia. But okay. there was certainly Navy off the coast of Japan.
Well, he's making his argument about Europe, though,
provoking the Japanese. Japan and Germany were allies.
Well, wait a second. I want to talk about what's real world today. The terrorists that attacked the towers on 9/11 specifically said among their reasons was the U.S. support for Israel and the U.S. presence in the Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia. So whether or not they were taught to hate
mass murder, whether or not you believe that is what they actually they hate Jews because Jews exist. That's why they hate Israel.
I don't know what they're. Maybe this is true and maybe it isn't. Israel. We'll never know because
you ever read the Quran?
Yes. You mean all of it, all the way through, or parts of it?
I read all those rabbis, what do they call them, mullahs, teachings, and what they tell to do to people that.
Well, that's a different story. I mean, just because I have read the Bible doesn't mean that I've read everything that any preacher said.
No, I said the Quran. The Quran doesn't. Right. The Bible doesn't preach hate. The Quran does.
Jesus Christ said that he didn't come to bring peace, but to bring a sword. So, I mean, I don't know what that means.
Right. How many wars has people in your lifetime started on behalf of that victim? None.
So it has to be in my lifetime. Look. Now you're arguing the difference between Christianity and Islam. I'm not either one of these things. I don't care about your stupid people in the sky. Stop with that stuff. It's all just imaginary crap. The fact of the matter is, as long as your government is in the Middle East enforcing the will of kings and despots, that people are going to attack you over it, and you know it.
So we deserved it.
Who is we? Who is we?
Well, you're the one that says it.
I do not say it. Nobody on 9/11 deserved it because these people believe in the state. You believe in the state. They didn't deserve it. The fact of the matter is the people in the Pentagon deserved it. They were going about working and doing that stuff.
Oh, my God. Well, now I will cite the invisible man in the sky and suggested that you actually find some kind of moral grounding that to make
I do have a moral grounding, just like you do, Whit. I believe in the non-aggression principle.
That flew a plane into a building with people that worked in the building. That's immoral.
Whit, have you ever heard of blowback?
Yes, I've heard of blowback.
Okay, that is why that is why the quote unquote people in the Middle East hate us, is because the U.S. government has been involved in the Middle East for decades. Decades. We know for a fact that the CIA was involved in the Iranian coup in 1959. The CIA was involved in Iran and in Iraq and all of the Middle Eastern countries. The CIA was involved in helping fund and arm al-Qaeda when al-Qaeda was fighting the Russians in Afghanistan in the 80s. And then the funding stopped. And then Osama bin Laden got mad because Sugar Daddy walked away. I got rid of Whit because he kept talking over us and wouldn't let us put out a thought. And, as the person who is operating the government of this radio show tonight, I took that liberty to eliminate a caller who would not let us express our opinion.
Well, I wish you'd have kept him. Whit keeps on calling in and challenging the ideas, and I'm for that. I want him to. Challenge those ideas. But the fact of the matter is that as long as you work within an organization that, like the U.S. military, that is subjugating people, it's pretty obvious that you're going to be a prime target. The fact of the matter is there's troops on the ground in Saudi Arabia. If you don't think that affects how the politics operate in Saudi Arabia, you're not living in the real world. Clearly, those people... The United States had a revolution. It was a couple of 100 years ago, but people picked up arms and, killed the British and got them out of here, through sheer luck, mind you. And the people in other countries should be able to do that too. The U.S. government shouldn't have troops on the ground enforcing their will in those countries, which is to keep, sheiks and kings in power.
I watched the remake of Red Dawn a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I can't bring myself to do it.
And... There was one quote in particular near the beginning of this movie that was very telling, where one of the main characters is a Marine, just got back from serving in Iraq, and then, the North Koreans come in, and he's telling his brother and all of his brother's friends, this is what we're going to do. He said, I was over there, and we were the good guys, and now we're the bad guys, and we get the chance to just make a mess and cause chaos for them. And I was thinking, wait a second. I wonder how many people are going to watch this and not connect that that's how the people... not every person in Iraq, but a lot of people in Iraq are thinking is, hey, wait a second. Here's this invading force. Let's go make a mess for them.
Well, more than 100,000 people died in Iraq. That's according to State Department documents. Many of those people were non-combatants. More than 100,000 non-combatants died in Iraq during the war. I don't care which side you're on. Are you going to be thanking the U.S. government if they killed your kid or they killed your wife or they killed your husband? Nobody's going to be thanking you for that. Every time the U.S. government, military gets involved in something, it creates more terrorists. It creates more people that hate you. Not because of their god, Whit. Not because of the magic guy in the sky that they worship, but because you're supporting an organization that killed their parents.
And if you want to call in to challenge us, that's fine. But when you ask us a question and we are answering the question, don't try to talk over us, because it's a conversation. We're supposed to talk with one another, not yell at one another.
Well, I wonder whether, I don't know how Whit's calling in, but sometimes people can't really hear on their phones. So, I get where you're coming from, but Whit does seem to be a filibusterer. There's no doubt about it. I'd like to have a more reasoned conversation with him, and I don't feel like he listens to me. But, that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, not everybody is going to agree with us, and that's fine. Because if everybody agreed, this would be a really boring radio show. Listen during the week. Mark and Ian don't always agree with one another. I don't always agree with Mark. So far tonight, I think we've been, agreeable.
Well, you hung up on Whit, and I don't agree with that.
We will take Whit again. Generally, it's one call per night. Whit, we will take you on the premise that you will not talk over either myself or Mark. If you do, we will drop you again. Whit, go ahead.
You get the first word and you always get the last word. And whoever talked over whom is a matter of argument, to be honest with you. I was suggesting some thoughts to you, and I would submit to you. You talked over me. But thanks for taking me back on, by the way. It's really interesting that there have not been factions in Germany or Japan that I can think of since we've been occupying them for the last 70 years that have blown up Americans working in the Pentagon or Americans working in office towers or trying to take out the White House or whatever.
Sure.
Again, the people in the Middle East that you're defending, that you say the CIA propped up all these rogue regimes and all that, they, again, hated you
long before you even realized it, and they're being taught to hate, just like the Japs that bombed Pearl Harbor were taught to hate.
You love bringing up a 70-year-old war, Whit. The fact is,
we have forces in Germany and Japan right now. They're not attacking us.
Indeed we do. Okay, so Japan is a unique cultural situation. In Japan, if a commander loses a battle, he sticks a sword in his gut and disembowels himself on the battlefield. And a commander that likes him will go lop his head off to help him out. I mean, this is a unique cultural situation. For Japan to sort of lay down and refuse to fight on. The fact is, neo-Nazis still exist in Germany, and the Nazis continue to fight on after World War II existed. Have they come over here? No, because the United States learned a lesson in World War I with the Treaty of Versailles not to be so rigorous in the strictures placed on Germany, and in that case in Japan too. But the fact is, after that, in the Middle East, we're keeping people like King Fahd in power in Saudi Arabia. Would you like it if China came over here and said, we like Obama, he's going to stay in power for the rest of time and in his lineage? That's ridiculous.
We didn't prop up the House of Saud. The House of Saud predated every politician you can think of, and I'm not here to defend the House of Saud.
Apparently you are, because you're defending U.S. policy in the Middle East.
You're saying I am. No, I think that the Middle East is overpopulated by a bunch of theocratic gangsters and murderers and Ayatollahs that need to be gotten rid of for the sake of civilization and humanity and its continuance.
And that's what the U.S. government thinks too.
So you support genocide of everyone who is Arabic?
No, I support the termination of people that preach hate and preach that Americans don't have a right to exist because they have freedoms, that Jews don't have a right to exist, that infidels don't have a right to exist. And believe it or not, there are like hundreds of millions of people over there that do believe that. But there are also like a billion other people that don't, and they're not doing anything about it. And neo-Nazis do exist in Germany, of course. But Germany is a free country. Thank God for the U.S. military sticking around after
So you like the idea?
And Japan is a free country. Thank God for them, because the U.S. military stuck around after 1945.
You like that the U.S. government has to populates 130 nations with 1,000 military bases?
I think we're the greatest country in the world. We're a free country, and I want to protect liberty throughout the land.
Okay, can I withdraw my consent?
You're speaking freely against the government.
No, I'm not talking about speaking freely. I don't want to give them any damn money to go kill people in the Middle East with remote control airplanes. That's what I want to withdraw my consent from.
Really?
Dead babies.
People want you dead too, by the way.
Hey, look, I don't care whether
really want you dead.
I'm more scared of the U.S. government. I'm more scared of the U.S. government than I am of some people in the Middle East.
Whit, I would contend that you are the one preaching hate, saying that you think that everybody in the Middle East who is Muslim should be exterminated.
No, that's not what he said.
Quote, unquote, for the sake of civilized society. Well, he said...
Well, I don't know how
he said Muslims,
but I don't know how
he said Middle East.
I don't know how he's going to find out whether or not somebody wants to kill us for our freedom or wants to kill us because of blowback. It sounds like he's got a little caveat in there, but I'm sorry, drones don't differentiate. They just kill.
Right. And so basically what he's saying without actually saying it...
Did you drop him again?
I did.
Oh, God, you Daryl.
There's 45 seconds left in the show, Mark.
All right.
There's no need to have him on for the next 45 seconds.
Okay.
But I contend that he's the one that's preaching hate.
James is on the line in Arizona. You're on Free Talk Live, James.
Yes, Ian, I called in to answer a question you had in passing about what is the point of Lot's call?
Sure. Lot, for our listeners who are just tuning in, has called a few times. He called tonight earlier to kind of tell us about his vision for a future where everything has been reset to be equal. But I'm really paraphrasing and summarizing his call with that statement. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it was all nonsense based in a future where he's basically a pseudo-neo-Marxist that envisions a future where aliens come over and take us over. And we'll make good pets if that ever does happen. But I actually have never made fun of you or your callers or your show outright, even though I've been the victim of massive bashing. But I don't call to bring up the past, but just to, except for your show. It seems like Free Talk Live today, you had a guy that called in and talked many times about his boring running with the law in Detroit about noise ordinances. You had a poor woman call in about a dog in her neighbor with a bat. Why don't you just tell her to call the cops or animal shelter or whatever? And then you had Liberty Phoenix calling about transhumanism. And then, of course, that inspired Lot to call. Well,
thank you for the summary of the last 2 hours of the program.
Yeah, the last hour was those two callers who were basically...
So what?
Amazingly,
wait, he's getting to a point.
He's not going to get to a point. He never gets to a point. He's going to say that I called him boring one time, and it really upset him. But Whit, the fact is,
I didn't call about the past.
Really,
Mark, can you stop interrupting?
You just summarized the past 2 hours. But where are you going to go with this, Whit? Go ahead.
Well, today, especially Liberty Phoenix and Lot. Today, Free Talk Live is what I would say has been the opiate for the dumb masses who think they're so smart and have rejected the God of the Bible and are now looking in science fiction for truths that are actually, if you actually believe in the God of the Bible, you'd find all that Lot's looking for, including the funny story about where his name comes from. But Mark,
how do we get back? So, all right, how do we get back there? How do we get back on that road to the God of the Bible?
Read it. Get in the book.
I've read it 7 times, or I read the New Testament 7 times.
Right on, Mark.
I don't like it.
Well, I mean, so Mark read the book. Mark? I'm sorry, just one quick interjection here. Mark read the book 7 times. I was raised
New
Roman.
Testament, I should say.
I was raised Roman Catholic. I was an altar boy. I had religious instruction from 1st to 11th grade. So I think the two of us are at least well versed in what that world has to offer, and we've moved away from that.
You're proving my point, by the way.
Why?
Lot and True Liberty Phoenix have obviously given up on the Bible too, and then you and Mark and Lot and Liberty Phoenix for an hour talk about nonsense about transhumanism and aliens coming and abducting us and making us a Marxist dream state. Okay, you spent the last hour talking to those morons. Forgive me, I don't want to bash your callers, but they're not even living on planet Earth, which is what I want to live on and what we should be concerned with, and not some make-believe future. But Mark, by the way, speaking of the very recent past, you interrupted me on Sunday.
I thought you said you weren't going to call and talk about the past.
You didn't even let me respond to what you were saying. The fact is, Lot, if you like...
That's not Lot. That's James.
I'm sorry.
I'm putting him on hold because you're right. He had plenty of time to speak, and he didn't give you a chance to respond.
Well, he knows that if he doesn't take a breath in between sentences, that he can claim, you interrupted me! Right? Like he gets on and, this has happened over and over again. Right. If you don't like what's on Free Talk Live, there are lots and lots of preachers out there talking about the Bible.
Oh, yeah,
and they'll take your call right now because nobody's listening to their shows.
That's not true. There's got to be people watching the 700 Club or whatever.
No, I said lots and lots. The fact is that there are many, many, many preachers out there right now that are doing
But James is trying to save you. I mean, he's calling to try to save you
I am
tonight.
not savable.
And this is why I asked.
I am my own Messiah.
How can I get back to the God of the Bible? Because it's a great marketing strategy.
Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior.
Forgive me to interrupt. I've already spoken enough about more than about religion that I even wanted to ever talk about.
But wait, wasn't that why you were calling tonight? Was to save Free Talk Live?
The other thing I told your call screener I called in about was the two faces of Mark, and I'm going to call you a liar, Mark. And may I prove how you are?
Okay.
Because I once said to you, I hate liars, and lying for your cause is wrong and immoral. And the God I believe in will punish you one of these days for smearing people too, Ian. But you said, I thought that was a pretty good call. And Ian said he even had a good call last night. And then so I went to Free Talk Live archives and the 2 previous shows that I called in. I got hung up on by Ian. Gratefully, he always gets his rocks off, cut me in mid-sentence.
God.
And you said that was ludicrous, and Ian agreed, and then blah, blah, blah. And then the previous night,
that was the night when Whit has no wit, and Ellen had her great belly laugh with a bad joke, and Ian
No, I said I don't give a wit.
Anti-gay.
Is there any way that I could turn this conversation in a more positive direction?
I want to address
Last night, on Sunday night, you told me I had made a good call, but you were lying. You just wanted to interrupt me and then make me skip a beat. And
good call, James. Good call.
Whit.
Yeah.
We had said...
Ian, can I ask you a question?
No! For God's sake, you stinking crazy man! You just talked to me and you don't want to listen? For Christ's sake, you're insane! Good for God's sake, Whit! We said shut him off! God, I hate this dude! He's so... you pedantic... boring narcissist.
Can I have one
Mark,
more
you need to calm down. You need to calm. Just step away, Mark. Just step away. I want Mark. You to just leave the room. I just take your headphones off. Leave the room. Brett, go ahead.
I want to.
Hey, Brett, can I ask you a question?
But I'm going to ask you a question. What?
Okay, go ahead and please answer my question, because you once said something about in conservative talk radio, and you hear a lot of hate and immigrant bashing and racism.
Yeah.
It was a couple weeks ago when you were talking about welfare and how a lot of rednecks blame immigrants for welfare kiting and all that.
Yeah.
Can you name those? I listen to a lot of conservative talk radio, and I don't know who you're talking about.
Dennis Prager, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Howie Carr in Boston on WRKO.
I listen to Dennis Prager every day. He is never
that explains a lot. Thanks, James. James, he's in Scottsdale, Arizona. James, you're on Free Talk Live with Ian, Brett, and Mark. Hello, James.
Yes, may Detective Charles Chuck Dinwiddie rest in peace.
Who's that?
And for all those... The one that Tom was celebrating the hour of his death yesterday, he wasn't talking about the guy in Brentwood. And when he said finally finished off and enclosed in a casket.
Oh, you're talking about our caller yesterday, Tom from New Hampshire, who was celebrating the death of a police officer. Gotcha.
Yes, and I should like to say that anybody on Free Talk Live, any of your listeners or even hosts that thought that joke was funny, I hope that they suffer the same type of hell that poor officer's family is suffering right now. I truly do think Tom is a wicked and disgusting human being. But I did hear some people laugh.
I thought that Tom was being, far better than he has been in the past on calls, and that his conversation, while lyrical, didn't cross the line into cop hating. He said they closed the casket.
It was murdered in the line of duty.
No, he did not make a joke. Could you quote the joke for me, please?
Finally finished off in a closed casket, if I remember from memory. Haven't checked the archives. Why don't you check the archives and find out if Whit
I'll say, James, he did have what seemed like, to me, because I listened to it, and it seemed like he had a nice punchy ending prepared that did draw...
He seemed to me, Brett, no disrespect, that he seemed to be thinking that the cop had it coming because he's on the wrong side of the drug war, as in that he's the bad guy and the narco-capitalist and his girlfriend that shot at the cops are the good guys. But I didn't call in to talk about that. I just wanted to cast some scorn and maybe some religious, spiritual upbringing onto your fellow host and listeners. I listened for an hour and a half after that show, and not one person condemned Tom. But one of the hosts sure did laugh. And Tom is a wicked individual, most definitely. Check the tapes. I think I quoted him pretty damn accurately, but I haven't listened to the tapes. But Brett,
I think Tom definitely was gloating about the death. I mean, he seemed to be reveling in it, and I was probably the one who laughed too. Just to be fair, I don't really remember.
I think that
you're not Catholic, you're not Christian, and you reject the God of the Bible. And just like I find it ironic that people that make fun of circumcision call Bradley a dude that looks like a lady.
James, wait, Ian. I'm watching Ian's finger. He's so ready to hang up on you. And you said something about making me an offer. So I just wanted to make sure that we got that in. I'm interested in what the offer is.
Well, I already offered if you listen to Free Talk Live when you're not in studio,
once in a while,
$200,000 if you can come up with just one racist comment that my talk radio head hero, Dennis Prager, has ever said that's racist or anti-immigrant.
So this was from a couple weeks ago when I said that there was. Was it last week that I said there was some racism in conservative talk radio, or there's very much a racist code language that is used by conservatives. It's not overt racism, and I'll tell you exactly why that is. Now, first of all, as far as Dennis Prager is concerned,
twice by name, Brett.
What?
You mentioned Dennis Prager twice by name.
Oh, okay. James, thanks for the challenge. Appreciate hearing from you tonight. Go ahead with your explanation about radio racism, talk hosts, etc.
All right.
You never get through a sentence with James still on the line.
As far as James is concerned...
What do you mean? Whoa. You think you can get through a sentence? You see, this is the point, is that as soon as you start saying something, he's going to jump in. And, I get it. He was holding you to task. He said you mentioned Prager. I remember you mentioning Prager.
So he is offering $100,000 to anyone who can find something, what was it, racist?
Racist that Dennis Prager said. So I don't know. I don't listen to Dennis Prager.
Or anti-immigrant.
Here's this. As of right now, I do not have any examples of Dennis Prager. I think in the spur of the moment, I foolishly tried to lump together a bunch of names of conservative hosts, of which Dennis Prager was one. I have no examples of Dennis Prager being
on live radio,
racist,
right?
So I would like to apologize to James, and I'm sorry for any discomfort or problems that might have caused him in the past week, knowing that a man on the radio had said something bad about Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager actually has, some things that are okay that he says. I've heard him before. Yeah. But I will stick to this idea that generally conservative talk show hosts have a racist code language that they use. Now, I sound like I'm borrowing terms from the left here, but I'll tell you.
You do.
I'll tell you why this is. For a long time, conservatives were not allied with the religious right as they are today. They were not allied with deeply religious evangelical people. That didn't start until the late 70s and early 80s when they took a page from the Democrats' playbook. The Democrats, since the days of FDR, had been identifying poor, downtrodden minorities, women as their cause. Because in their high-minded intellectual ivory towers, they said, these people are poor, so they're dumb, and they'll believe whatever we tell them. So the conservatives, by the late 70s and early 80s, realized that they would use the same trick against the dumbest people they could find. And I'm speaking from their point of view. I'm not saying all evangelicals or, Southern Christians are dumb, but you find deeply religious people in the South. You also find a lot more racism in the South. So they have been building this code language of racism.